We've put up tremendous amount of our own personal resources, over $100,000 in this campaign. And the reason why is because we need to engage the voter, we need to get them out, and so that we can make sure that we have positive leaders in our community.
That's right.
What I will do is what I have been doing for the past 20 years since I've been back in Hidalgo County, and that is I've been very actively involved in our party, not just when I was seeking office, but even when I was not seeking office, in my off year, so to speak. You know, many people complain that they only see the candidates when they're up for election, and that's the only time they get involved. Well, that hasn't been me. I have been there. I have been supporting the party's efforts through financial contributions, but also being involved in various get out the vote rallies or various efforts, registration of voters, just at all different levels. And I've also participated by going to schools and talking to students and talking to them about the importance of becoming registered and being active and engaged and becoming informed voters, trying to get them involved at an early age, much like you all are doing. So I do really applaud your efforts. It's excellent. And I've also done more, for instance, as a judge, as a candidate for the Texas Supreme Court. I was asked to run in 2016 by our state party leaders, and running statewide is a daunting task, and I did it knowing I probably couldn't win. And the reason I couldn't win is because I'm a lifelong Democrat, and of course I ran as a Democrat. And we haven't elected a Democrat statewide since 1994. So the odds were completely against me. But I went ahead and ran because I do believe that it's important that we always have qualified candidates in every single position on the statewide ballot. And we needed to fill those positions. And I was willing to do that, to go out there, to help spread the message about change that is needed on our Texas Supreme Court from not just an ethnic and gender standpoint, but from a philosophical standpoint. That's still true today, and I feel very proud that I did my part on creating the awareness for that need. I feel like I helped generate more turnout in 2016. In fact, I actually have the record at this point. I got almost 3.6 million votes, and that's the highest number of votes for any statewide candidate to date, excluding presidential candidates, of course. And I felt that I made a difference. I was actually endorsed by the Dallas Morning News, by the Houston Chronicle, by the Corpus Christi Caller-Times, against a two-term Republican Supreme Court incumbent. And that's because they agreed with me. My message resonated. So I didn't have much money to work with in that campaign, trust me. But I went around the state as much as I could. I'm sorry? 10 seconds. And so I've been very active. I've been an active Democrat for a long time, not just when I've been seeking office, to help encourage people to get involved and support our party.
In your opinion, what is the worst, most broken aspect of our justice system that needs to be fixed? What parts of our justice system do you think work well?
Well, the worst part is access to justice for the poor. And there are commissions in place to help fund the different type of clinics. You've heard of them as legal aid clinics. And unfortunately, the budget has impacted those clinics because the legislature has cut back and restricted the funds that are available for these various organizations to help service the poor. So that is something that we have to continue to help find ways to generate more money so that that there can be fair and equal access for the poor people in our community to the judicial system. Along the same lines, in the criminal aspect, there are court-appointed attorneys that are available for the indigent defendants, but unfortunately, oftentimes the attorneys that are appointed are not as experienced as an attorney that perhaps could be retained, And unfortunately, many times, what we see on appeal is we see mistakes that are made due to that inexperience. And so that's also a problem that needs to be addressed. And again, it comes down to funding. What is the best? Is that what you asked me? The worst and the best? The best? I think it's just the system that we have. We have, as you heard earlier with some of the trial judge candidates, we have the best system in the world in the sense that people have a fair opportunity by being judged by their peers with our jury system. And that's not to say that mistakes aren't made. That's our job on the appellate court is, as I said earlier, we review the decisions that are made by the juries, by the judges, to make sure that the decision was made according to the law. And if whoever loses at our level then has the right to a further appeal to the Texas Supreme Court or to the Court of Criminal Appeals, depending on whether it's civil or criminal. So there's a very good system of checks and balances in place. And so that's the best part of it. It's just the system that we have. And I'm very proud to have been able to have served you all for 15 years as an appellate court justice. It's a privilege to serve you, and I'm proud to have a reputation of being fair and balanced in my decision making. I've upset a few people along the way that haven't won, but that's the nature of the beast, as they say. Because everybody that comes before us, somebody's going to win, somebody is going to lose. But we do our best at that court to apply the law as it is, and we don't do legislating from the bench, as we're not supposed to, and we do our best to make sure that justice prevails in the cases that come before us.
Well, I think the best aspect of our legal system is the jury system. And the reason why is because it guarantees that in all cases, civil cases anyway, and criminal cases, everyone is going to has the opportunity to be judged by a panel of their peers from the community. And one of the problems with the appellate courts, which is the Court of Appeals, and not just the 13th, I'm talking about all courts of appeals, and particularly the Texas Supreme Court right now, is that they tend to substitute their own opinion for the opinion of the jurors. And I can tell you, if I'm the Chief Justice of this court, I will give great deference to the verdicts, to the voice of the people. When the jury speaks, the jury is the judge of the facts. The judge is the judge of the law. But when the jury speaks on the facts, they are to be given great deference. As far as the worst aspects, I would say number one is the lack of access to justice. Number one, it's way too expensive, especially the civil system is way too expensive. And Justice Contreras just got through mentioning about a commission that oversees delivery of legal services to the poor. That's the commission I was telling you about, the Texas Access to Justice Commission, which oversees the delivery and coordinates all those legal aid programs. I was appointed to that commission that was created by the Texas Supreme Court. I was one of the first commissioners ever appointed to help coordinate that. But just getting more money from the government to fund that is not enough. We have to step up to the plate. So for example, when the funding was cut off for Texas Rural Legal Aid, when they were representing on a class action basis a bunch of homeowners in a housing complex that didn't have any heat, and they couldn't get an abatement on their rent even though it was freezing and they didn't have any heaters, they lost their funding, the organization did, and they asked me to step in. I stepped in, I completed that class action, I recovered every penny for those homeowners. They got it all. And then I was also awarded attorney's fees for the work I did, and I turned around and donated every penny back to the Texas Rural Legal Aid. And then finally, the worst aspect is not just access to justice, but equality, especially in our criminal cases. If you're brown or you're black, then we don't get equal treatment. And there are way too many disparity in sentences, and there has to be equal justice for all. All persons, no matter who they are, need to be treated fairly, and they need to be treated with respect and with dignity.
That's right.
Oh, sorry. Please summarize the key aspects of your platform and what you hope to accomplish in this position.
There are some things about this court that I think can be addressed and improved. It's actually Chief Justice Roy Valdez, who's been the Chief Justice for 16 years, runs a very efficient court, and he's going to leave very big shoes to fill. And in working with him, and also going all the way back to Justice Searden and working with him, I do know some things that can be done to help improve the efficiencies on this court. Number one, I want to work on the court's internal operating procedures. Some of them are published and available online, but a lot of them are not. They need to be revisited, and we need to push for more transparency so that everyone knows what the internal operating procedures are, with the exception of anything that, with rare exception. Something that I worked on with the chief specifically are Chapter 22 funds. Chapter 22 is part of the government code, and what that means is there are filing fees that are paid on civil cases, and part of that filing fee is used by the counties to help defray the cost of the Court of Appeals. And any of those fees that are left over go to the court, and they are managed by the Chief Justice of the court. Those are called Chapter 22 funds. Right now, the statute just says that they can be used by the Chief Justice for any official court business, but there's no delineation on that. I believe that there should be written policies and procedures that are put in place on the use of those funds. And then probably the third thing that I'd want to work on, and this would probably be of most interest to especially the young Democrats in this room, is I would want the court to consider whether the staff attorneys should have more flexible schedules. The court can't pay attorneys very much money because our budget is very low, but yet we've got to recruit the very best young lawyers to assist in the court. And so nowadays, you know, we've got internet, we've got, 1 minute, right? We've got internet, we've got you know, iPads and laptops, and do you really have to be in the office to do your work, or can you do some of that work, you know, at your home? Can we have more flexible work schedules, especially for the young families? And it's something that I'd want to visit with the other justices about, not be a dictator about it, but get a consensus with the other 5 justices who are on the court and come up with better workplace environment, better benefits for our young staff.
Once again, thank you for this opportunity. As I said, I have been on the court 15 years, so of course I'm most familiar with how things are done, and we do run a very efficient court. But that's not to say that I'm not going to suggest change or try to implement change. In fact, one thing that I plan to do is to visit a number of the other courts of appeals around the state, because, as I said, there are 14, and every court does things differently. They all have their own budget for each individual court, and they can set things up the way they want to set them up. So it's interesting to see how they're all done very differently. So my plan is to go to visit, especially Austin, San Antonio, because they're similar sized courts. San Antonio has 7 justices, Austin has 6. And maybe a couple of the other bigger courts like Houston or Dallas, and see how they do things, to see if there is room for improvement at our court. As I said, we do things very well, but there's always room for improvement, so that's certainly something I plan to do. And as far as addressing what my opponent just mentioned, we actually do incorporate some flexibility into our attorneys' schedules. But what's very important is that the attorneys be in the office, because much of what goes on in the decision-making process is deliberation between the judges and between the lawyers, and talking about the issues, exchange of ideas, exchange of information, because